Hello, sleepy thinkers, and welcome to Sleepy Science Teller. Tonight, we'll drift back far, far into time, to a world ruled by giants, a world where the ground trembled beneath enormous feet, and the skies echo with the calls of strange, ancient creatures. This is the story of dinosaurs in the end of an era. Close your eyes and imagine Earth, not as it is today, but as it once was over 200 million years ago. The air was thick with warmth, the forest stretched endlessly, and enormous reptiles roamed beneath towering ferns and volcano-lit skies. For more than 160 million years, these magnificent beings ruled the land, the air, and even the seas. But one day, their world changed forever. Tonight, we'll gently explore that world and how it came to an end. Before we begin our journey together, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there in your part of the world? Share your little corner of Earth down in the comments below. It always feels wonderful to imagine our bedtime explorers drifting off to dreams all across the planet. And if you find peace and wonder in these sleepy journeys, please softly tap the like button. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you never miss a calm night of curiosity. Now, let's step quietly into the past. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine drifting backward through time. Not hundreds, not thousands, but millions upon millions of years. The world around you begins to change. The air grows warmer, thicker, and smells faintly of rain, earth and life just beginning. The continents you know, the places we call home, start to slide and drift like pieces of a puzzle, slowly moving across the sea. And before you unfolds a planet that feels alive in every breath. It is roughly 250 million years ago, and the Earth is awakening from a great silence, a silence left behind by the Permian extinction, the greatest die the world has ever known. Nearly all life had been lost, but slowly, tenderly, the planet began to heal. Volcanoes rumble softly in the distance, their smoke rising into a pale orange sky. The air shimmers with heat, and rivers of molten rock carve glowing paths through the land. Yet, in this chaos, life stirs again. Tiny reptiles creep through ferns that glisten with dew. Strange insects buzz around stagnant ponds, and the first seeds of the new age begin to take root. Among these fragile beginnings, a new kind of creature appears. Small, quick, and full of potential. They are not yet the mighty titans of storybooks. They are delicate, lizard-like beings, moving cautiously through the underbrush. But evolution has gifted them something special, something that will one day make them kings of the earth. Strong legs for running, sharp eyes for spotting danger, and lungs built for endurance. In the quiet shadows of an ancient forest, the first dinosaurs take their first trembling steps. They are survivors of a wounded world, and though their start is humble, their destiny is vast. Millions of years pass like slow breaths. The continents continue to move. The sky is clear, and the warmth of the sun returns in full. Forests expand, rivers deepen, and the air fills with the sound of life. And through it all, the dinosaurs begin to grow, not just in size, but in form and diversity. Some become swift hunters, their bodies lean and built for speed. Others learn to graze on the lush greenery, growing heavy and calm. They spread across the land, finding homes in every forest, swamp, and plain. This is their time. A time that will last longer than the entire human story. And though their world is gone now, its mystery remains. whispering softly through stone, through fossil and memory, through the ancient rhythm of the earth itself. The age of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic era, was not just an age of animals. It was an age of transformation. Imagine a world with no human footprints. No roads, no cities, no lights. Only the endless song of nature. Forests stretch as far as the eye can see, filled with towering trees called cycads and conifers. Ferns cover the ground like a green ocean, and giant dragonflies float lazily through the warm air. In this world, the rules of life are still being written. Every creature is an experiment, every form a possibility. Evolution is painting with bold strokes, creating new designs, new colors, new ways to live. And the dinosaurs, they are its masterpiece. Some grow tall enough to see over forests. Some grow teeth sharp enough to cut through bone. Some move gracefully on two legs, balancing with long tails that sway behind them like pendulums. At first, their presence is subtle, a small change in the rhythm of the food chain. But slowly, across millions of years, they become the dominant form of life on Earth. They are creatures of balance, each one perfectly suited to its world, a world that is still hot, humid, and full of storms. Volcanoes breathe smoke into the sky. Lightning flashes across tropical plains. Rain falls in heavy sheets, feeding the vast, green jungles that stretch across Pangaea. And through this wildness, dinosaurs thrive. Their bones grow light yet strong. Their bodies become marvels of adaptation. They move like flowing rivers, graceful but unstoppable. To stand among them, if one could, would be feel both awe and insignificance. Imagine looking up at a creature so tall that its head disappears into the mist, or hearing the low rumble of footsteps echoing across the valley, each one shaking the earth beneath your feet. But despite their power, they are not monsters. They are part of a living balance. Hunters and grazers, predators and prey, each giving meaning to the other. In the stillness of their world, there is beauty, a peaceful rhythm that feels timeless. For 100 million years, this harmony continues, uninterrupted. Fossilized rivers show us where they drank. Tracks pressed into mud tell us where they walked. And every bone, every shell, every print in stone is a message from that distant age. Yet, even now, the full story remains incomplete. For every fossil uncovered, 1,000 more lie hidden beneath the earth, waiting for hands that may never find them. That is the mystery of the dinosaurs. They lived so long, so fully, and yet they vanished so completely. We can only listen to the quiet echoes they left behind, and wonder what they saw, what they felt, and what it meant to live in a world that belonged entirely to them. In time, the dinosaurs would grow to unimaginable scales. The ground-shaking sauropods, the sharp-eyed theropods, the armored ankylosaurs, and the horned ceratopsians, each one an expression of Earth's endless creativity. But even as we study them, even as we try to piece together their bones and colors and calls, a deep mystery remains. How did they become what they were? What secrets did they carry in their blood and breath? And how did they shape the world we live in now? The rocks remember. They hold the traces. Fossils locked in sandstone. Imprints left in volcanic ash. Skeletons resting for millions of years, untouched by time. When paleontologists find these bones, they are not merely uncovering history. They are awakening it. Each fossil is a story waiting to be told. A whisper from a creature that once walked beneath the same stars as we do. The bones of a predator might tell of a chase across a floodplain. The tracks of a mother and her young might speak of protection, of quiet care, of life as it was, fierce but tender. There's a profound calm in imagining it, a night long before humans, when the wind moved softly through prehistoric trees, and the earth was ruled by creatures both strange and familiar. The mysterious age of the dinosaurs is not just about their might. It is about their endurance, their beauty, and their connection to all life that followed, because, in a way, they never truly disappeared. Their legacy survived in the air and the soil, and even within us. The oxygen we breathe today comes partly from the forests that once fed them. The birds we see in our skies are their direct descendants, living echoes of that ancient age. So when we hear the flap of wings or the song of a bird at dawn, we are, in a quiet way, hearing the voice of a dinosaur. The mystery of their age is not meant to be solved completely. It is meant to be felt, like standing at the edge of the ocean, listening to the waves, knowing that beneath them lies a depth we will never fully reach. The dinosaurs remind us that time is vast, that life is resilient, and that every ending carries within it the seed of something new. They lived through storms, through fire, through the endless cycle of creation and destruction. They watched continents drift, mountains rise and crumble, and stars move slowly across the heavens. And still they endured until the day their chapter closed. But for now, in this quiet moment, we remember the beginning, the dawn of their age, the mystery that started it all, a time when Earth belonged not to us, but to them, the silent giants of history, who walked this planet long before our first dreams began. Imagine a world long before humans ever walked upon it, before cities, before forests as we know them, before even the grass beneath our feet. The earth was younger then, wild, restless, and full of life and forms that now exist only in stone. This was the Mesozoic era, the age of the dinosaurs, stretching from about 252 to 66 million years ago. It lasted for nearly 186 million years, a time so long that if all of human history were a single day, the Mesozoic would feel like an eternity. Close your eyes and imagine stepping into that ancient world. The air feels warmer, thicker. There's no chill in the wind, no ice at the poles, only a heavy, golden warmth that wraps the planet like a blanket. Before you stretches an enormous continent, Pangaea, a single massive landmass that covers much of the Earth's surface. There are no separate Americas, no divided Africa or Asia. Instead, one vast body of land drifts slowly across a shimmering blue ocean. The skies above are hazy, painted with streaks of orange and violet as the sun sets. Lightning flickers in the distance over active volcanoes, their plumes rising like towers into the atmosphere. The air smells faintly of ash and pine resin, a reminder that this planet is still forming, still alive beneath its crust. Now listen closely. The world is not silent. Insects hum beneath giant ferns. Strange amphibians croak from steaming ponds. And somewhere in the distance, you might hear the soft call of an early dinosaur, a sound lost to time, yet imagined by every curious mind sense. The earth, during the Mesozoic, was a place of motion. The continents slowly drifted apart, driven by powerful currents deep within the planet. Pangaea began to split, forming two giant continents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. This slow separation reshaped everything. Oceans formed where there were once valleys. New climates emerged. Some lands became humid jungles, while others turned into wide deserts, where sandstorms swept endlessly beneath the sun. And yet life thrived. From the depths of warm seas to the peaks of volcanic hills, every corner of the planet pulsed with growth and change. To stand in that time, if one could, would be to see the world reborn each day, a planet still discovering what it wanted to be. As millions of years flowed quietly by, the Mesozoic world blossomed into endless variety. Everywhere, life reached upward, toward sunlight, toward survival, toward wonder. Forests were unlike those of today. There were no flowering plants yet, no roses, no daisies, no fruit trees. Instead, the land was filled with towering conifers, spiral-leaved cycads, and feathery ferns that spread across valleys like green mist. Imagine standing in one of those ancient forests. The air is heavy with moisture. Droplets cling to every leaf, and shafts of light fall through the canopy, turning the mist to gold. Small creatures move quietly through the undergrowth. Primitive lizards, early mammals, and insect wings shimmering like glass. Rivers snake through the landscape, carrying volcanic ash and minerals that feed the lush growth. Their waters are teeming with ancient fish, and along their banks, dinosaur tracks press into the soft mud, fossil memories waiting to be written in stone. The Mesozoic sky, too, was alive. It was not the calm blue dome we see today, but a living painting of color and motion. Volcanic gases often tinted the atmosphere, giving sunrises a deep orange hue and sunsets a glowing crimson. Clouds hung low and wide, carrying the promise of rain to the endless forest below. Lightning storms crackled across tropical plains, while meteor showers glittered faintly in the distance. The sky forever watching, forever changing. Far above, strange creatures took to the air. The pterosaurs, not quite birds, not quite reptiles, glided on wings made of thin, leathery skin. Their calls echoed softly across canyons, and their shadows rippled over herds of dinosaurs grazing below. Beneath those skies, the world was both peaceful and wild. Imagine vast plains where sauropods, the gentle, long-necked giants, moved in slow, rhythmic herds, their footsteps leaving deep impressions in the earth. Smaller dinosaurs darted between their legs, feeding on ferns and low shrubs. Predators watched from the shadows, not out of malice, but as part of the endless cycle of life. In the shallow seas along the coastlines, marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs glided gracefully through the water, chasing schools of fish that shimmered like liquid silver. Everything had a purpose. Every life, every breath, wove into the quiet harmony of the planet. To look upon the Mesozoic world is to realize that Earth has always been an artist, patient, curious, and endlessly creative. Every mountain, every tree, every living thing was part of its long, unfolding masterpiece. And though this world is gone, its colors linger. In the stones we dig, in the skies we watch, and even in the hearts of those who dream of time before time. The Mesozoic Earth was more than a place. It was a living rhythm. Seasons came and went more gently than today. There were no icy winters, no frozen poles. Instead, warmth embraced nearly every corner of the planet. The air was rich with carbon dioxide, feeding the plants that grew thick and tall. The oceans shimmered under the sunlight, and coral reefs thrived in the shallows. building delicate castles of life. Birds, in their earliest forms, began to appear. Feathered dinosaurs leapt from branch to branch, their bright plumes catching the light. Some of them learned to glide, and in time to fly. These were the first test flights of nature's imagination, the beginnings of song, of movement, of freedom in the open air. The nights of the Mesozoic were warm and vivid. The stars shone brighter in skies free of pollution. The moonlight glimmered over still lakes, and the silhouettes of great beasts moved slowly through the mist. Perhaps a triceratops raised its head to the moon, listening to the distant rumble of thunder. Perhaps a theropod followed the scent of prey, its eyes glinting softly in the dark. And perhaps, somewhere nearby, a small mammal curled beneath roots and leaves, its tiny heartbeat echoing the rhythm of survival, the same rhythm that still lives within us today. The Mesozoic was not just an age of dominance, but an age of balance. Each creature, great or small, played its part in the grand design. When the rains came, the rivers swelled and spilled into the lowlands, feeding every living thing. When the volcanoes erupted, their ash, rich in minerals, renewed the soil and began the cycle again. Even destruction was creation. Even fire was rebirth. And through it all, the earth spun quietly beneath the stars, unaware that one day, millions of years later, creatures would look back in awe, try to imagine what it felt like to live in a world so pure, so ancient, so endlessly alive. That was the Mesozoic world. A living sculpture of time and transformation, a place where every sunrise painted new colors across the sky, and every heartbeat, whether reptile, bird, or mammal, was part of a story still being told. And though that world is gone, its echoes remain all around us, in the rocks beneath our feet, in the breath of wind that passes through trees, and in the soft hum of life that still fills the earth. The Mesozoic world reminds us that our planet has always been alive, ever-changing, ever-growing, ever-creating, and that somewhere deep within the heart of time, the earth still remembers the rhythm of those ancient days, when giants walked the land, and the world itself was young. Let your mind drift back farther still into the folds of time, to a world newly reshaped by fire, storms, and shifting seas. The age of the dinosaurs had not yet begun, but its stage was being set. The Earth stood at the dawn of the Triassic period, around 252 million years ago, rising from the ashes of the greatest extinction the planet had ever seen. The Permian Triassic extinction event had ended almost all life. Nearly 90% of species vanished, leaving the world eerily quiet. But from that silence, life began again. Forests slowly returned, spreading green across the wounded earth. New species of reptiles crept through the ferns, testing the air, the soil, the light. The climate was harsh, dry, hot, the land broken by volcanoes and salt flats. Yet where most creatures perished, some adapted. Among them were the archosaurs, the ruling reptiles, a group that would one day give rise to both crocodiles and dinosaurs. At first glance, these early archosaurs didn't seem remarkable. They were small, swift creatures with long tails and narrow jaws. But deep within their bones, evolution was quietly making changes. Their limbs began to shift, no longer sprawled out to the sides like lizards, but positioned more upright beneath the body. This simple adjustment changed everything. It meant they could run faster, breathe more efficiently, and conserve energy. The blueprint of the future was forming, the design that would soon dominate the Earth. In the low light of ancient sunsets, these first proto-dinosaurs hunted insects, chased smaller reptiles, and learned to move with speed and grace. The planet was healing, and evolution, with gentle patience, was sculpting its next great chapter. By around 230 million years ago, the first true dinosaurs appeared. They were small, perhaps the size of a dog, but they were quick, agile, and curious. Among the earliest was Eoraptor, whose name means dawn thief. It darted through the underbrush, its sharp eyes glinting in the fading light, its tiny hands clutching prey. In that moment, the age of the dinosaurs had begun, not with thunder or grandeur, but with quiet footsteps through the ancient ferns. These first dinosaurs were explorers of a recovering world, creatures born from survival and shaped by resilience. They carried within them the story of renewal, the strength to begin again, after nearly all life had ended. And so the long reign of the dinosaurs began, not in power, but in persistence. As the Triassic sun continued to rise and set, the world grew warmer, the forests denser, the creatures more diverse. The early dinosaurs began to branch into different forms, each shaped by the environment around them. Some, like Herosaurus, became hunters. It stood on two legs, its long tail balancing every step, its teeth sharp and curved. It could chase, leap, and strike with precision, a design that nature would perfect again and again. Others, like Plateosaurus, grew larger and heavier, feeding on the abundant vegetation that now covered the land. It stood upright, using its long neck to reach tender leaves, its body a slow, steady engine of life. The earth was a living laboratory. Every change in climate, every shift of land or sea, forced life to adapt, to experiment with new shapes, new colors, new ways of surviving. And from these experiments, the dinosaurs thrived. Their lungs grew more efficient, their metabolism faster. They could move for long distances, travel in herds, and withstand both drought and heat. For millions of years, they shared the earth with other great creatures, massive amphibians, flying reptiles, and the earliest mammals, small and nocturnal, hiding among roots and shadows. But slowly, the dinosaurs began to dominate. They filled the forests, the plains, and the river valleys. Each new generation stood taller, stronger, and more specialized. The late Triassic became their proving ground, an age of constant testing and transformation. Predators like Coelophysis roamed the dry floodplains, their slender bodies moving like shadows through the heat. They hunted in small groups, communicating with chirps and calls. Meanwhile, plant-eating dinosaurs learned to travel in herds, protecting their young, watching the skies for danger. The bond between predator and prey became a silent rhythm, a dance of survival that would define the next 150 million years. And in that balance, life flourished. For the first time since the Great Extinction, Earth was alive with diversity again, teeming with creatures that seemed born of imagination, yet entirely real. Every sound, every movement, every heartbeat was part of the same quiet story, the rise of the dinosaurs. By the end of the Triassic period, the dinosaurs had become the rulers of Earth. Their evolution had carried them from fragile survivors to the dominant life forms on land. But their rise was not guaranteed. It came through another trial by fire, Around 201 million years ago, a new wave of volcanic eruptions tore through the planet. Massive fissures opened across Pangaea, releasing floods of lava and thick clouds of gas. For centuries, the skies were filled with ash. The sunlight dimmed, and many species vanished once again. But the dinosaurs endured. Their bodies, adapted for resilience and efficiency, allowed them to survive where others could not. The great amphibians disappeared. Many reptiles and early mammal species faded away. But the dinosaurs, they marched forward. When the ash finally settled, a new world emerged. The supercontinent Pangaea began to break apart, creating wide coastlines, humid jungles, and fertile plains. And across these new landscapes, dinosaurs spread like wildfire in this new Jurassic world. They grew to sizes the Earth had never seen before. Long-necked sauropods grazed in endless herds. Predators like Dilophosaurus hunted with cunning precision, and the first birds, tiny feathered descendants of the dinosaurs, began to rise into the air. The age of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic dynasty, had truly begun. Their evolution was not only one of strength, but of balance between land and sky, between predator and prey, between creation and destruction. They became the living expression of Earth's endless creativity. Every scale, every bone, every feather was part of an ongoing masterpiece, painted across time itself. And as they roamed beneath the golden light of the Jurassic sun, their footsteps echoed through the valleys and plains. The sound of life reclaiming its power, the sound of Earth remembering how to dream. That dream would last for over 160 million years, until the final curtain fell. But for now, in this ancient world, the dinosaurs reigned in quiet majesty. Their journey from fragile survivors to timeless legends was complete. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine looking down at Earth from above, not as it is today, but as it was over 200 million years ago. The continents are not where you remember them to be. There is no Atlantic Ocean, no familiar outline of Europe, Africa, or the Americas. Instead, there is one vast land, Pangaea, a single supercontinent stretching from pole to pole, surrounded by a deep, endless ocean called Panthalassa. It was a world both familiar and alien. Mountains shimmered in the heat. Volcanoes fumed near the horizon, and enormous river systems cut through endless plains. Forests of cycads, conifers, and towering tree ferns spread like emerald oceans under the burning Triassic sun. But deep beneath this surface, invisible to the eye, Earth was never still. It was breathing, shifting, its crust divided into immense plates, floating upon a sea of molten rock. These tectonic plates moved slowly, perhaps only a few centimeters each year, but over millions of years, their movement reshaped everything. Where land met land, mountains rose. Where land drifted apart, new oceans were born. And with every motion, climates changed, currents shifted, and life was forced to adapt. The dinosaurs lived not on a static world, but upon a moving stage. Their habitats, their forests, deserts, and shores, were all created by this restless dance of continents. During the early Mesozoic era, as the first dinosaur began to roam, Pangaea's vast interior was dry and hot. There were few coastal ranges, and much of the land was desert, a land of survival. But near the coasts, lush forests thrived. Rivers carried nutrients to fertile floodplains. And here, The dinosaurs found abundance: water, plants, and shade. Some species became desert wanderers, adapted to the heat, to long journeys across cracked earth. Others remained near rivers and deltas, where life was softer, where the call of insects and the murmur of water filled the humid air. The continents beneath their feet were always moving, and so were the creatures themselves, migrating, evolving, exploring. Earth's restlessness was their constant companion. Time, for the dinosaurs, moved not in years or centuries, but in continents. Around 175 million years ago, Pangaea began to break apart. Slowly, quietly, the great landmass fractured into two pieces: Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. This breakup was not sudden. It took millions of years, but its consequences were profound. As the rifts opened, magma surged upward from the mantle, creating new oceans. The early Atlantic began to form, and with it came change: new coastlines, new climates, new opportunity for life. Where once there had been endless deserts, rains began to fall. Moisture from the young seas brought balance to the air. Forests spread once again, lush and dense. This new variety of landscapes gave birth to diversity. Dinosaurs that had once lived on a single continent now became isolated, separated by seas and mountains. Each population began to evolve in its own way, adapting to its own environment. In the north, the land of Laurasia grew cooler, its seasons more distinct. There, smaller, quick-moving hunters evolved. Nimble creatures like Velociraptor and Deinonychus, built for agility and intelligence. In the south, Gondwana remained warm and humid. It became the realm of the giants. The sauropods, massive, long-necked herbivores like Argentinosaurus and Patagodoton, creatures so vast that the ground trembled beneath them. Each shift in land and climate was like a painter changing colors. The earth, as if by design, was crafting new forms of beauty, new expressions of life. Over time, continents drifted farther apart. Africa, South America, Antarctica, and Australia slowly began their lonely journeys. The oceans widened, winds changed, and the dinosaurs adapted again and again. Their world was never fixed. Every million years brought a new challenge, a new landscape to call home. And through it all, they endured. They crossed volcanic plains, roamed beneath the canopies of primeval rainforests, and wandered snowy valleys near the poles. For dinosaurs, Earth's changes were not disasters. They were opportunities. They evolved with the planet itself, their fate intertwined with its endless motion. It was a slow dance, a geological waltz that would continue until the very end of their era. By the time the Cretaceous period dawned, the Earth had become a mosaic of continents and seas. The supercontinent was gone. In its place stood the early versions of the continents we know today. The climate was warm, the poles free of ice. Sea levels were higher, flooding vast regions of lowland. Shallow seas divided the continents, creating islands of life, each with its own ecosystems and unique species. In North America, the western interior seaway split the land in two on its lush western shores. Herds of triceratops grazed under towering conifers. In the humid east, predators like Tyrannosaurus rex stalked the coasts, their roars echoing across the misty waters. In South America, the sauropods continued to reign, behemoths that stretched longer than city buses. Their footsteps carved ancient paths through forests of cycads and flowering plants, plants that had newly evolved in this fertile age. In Asia, swift, bird-like dinosaurs began to appear, creatures covered in feathers, hunting in packs, or gliding between trees. They were hints of the world yet to come, the world after dinosaurs. And in the southern continents, Antarctica and Australia, lush forests grew even near the poles, bathing in months of sunlight before sinking into gentle winter darkness. Even here, dinosaurs thrived, adapting to the light and the cold, to the rhythm of the ancient Earth's heartbeat. Everywhere you look, the planet was alive, different, dynamic, and endlessly changing. The shifting continents had created diversity, and that diversity had made the dinosaurs unstoppable. For over 160 million years, they had ruled a world in motion, a planet that never stayed the same for long. And though their time would one day end, the Earth's slow drift would continue, pulling continents closer, pushing mountains higher, and whispering the same old lesson. To every age that followed, nothing in nature stays still, and yet everything is connected. As you breathe softly, imagine the continents still moving beneath you now, ever so slowly, reshaping the map of tomorrow, just as they did for the dinosaurs. Their habitats may be gone, their bones turned to stone, but the Earth they once knew still lives beneath your feet, still moving, still dreaming. Imagine a world filled with creatures of every shape, size, and color imaginable, some small enough to perch upon your hand, others taller than your home, their shadows stretching across forests of fern and mist. This was the age of the dinosaurs, a living kaleidoscope of evolution. But what truly makes them fascinating is not just their size or power, but their variety. The dinosaurs were not one kind of animal. They were thousands, spread across every corner of the earth. And yet, despite their diversity, scientists have found a beautiful order among the chaos. Every dinosaur you've ever heard of, from the long-necked Brachiosaurus, to the fierce Tyrannosaurus rex, to the plated Stegosaurus or horned Triceratops, belongs to one of two great families, the Saurischians and the Ornithischians. The names sound complex, but their meaning is simple. They refer to the shape of the hip bones. The Saurischians, meaning lizard-hipped, had hips shaped like those of modern reptiles. From them came two great lineages, the long-necked sauropods and the meat-eating theropods. The Ornithischians, meaning bird-hipped, evolved hips more like those of birds, though, curiously, it was the lizard-hipped dinosaurs that actually gave rise to modern birds. So strange, so full of twists, as evolution always is. Let's drift slowly through these families and meet some of their members, each one a masterpiece in the grand art of adaptation. Among the Saurischians, the sauropods stand as the giants of giants. They were the gentle titans, long-necked, long-tailed, moving with slow, rhythmic grace. Think of Diplodocus, whose body stretched over 20 meters, its neck sweeping through the treetops like a living crane, or Brachiosaurus, whose front legs were longer than its back, allowing its head to reach even higher, to leaves untouched by any other. Their hearts were massive, their blood pumped through towering necks, their lives spent wandering the plains, in herds that shook the earth with every step. And yet, Despite their immensity, they were peaceful beings. Their size was their armor, their calmness their strength. The other branch of the Saurischians, the theropods, were the hunters, the swift, the cunning, the sharp-toothed. From the tiny, bird-like Compsognathus to the towering Allosaurus, and finally to the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex. These were creatures of motion and precision. They ran upon two legs, their tails stretched for balance, their eyes forward, always searching. They were not mindless predators, but complex beings. Some hunted alone, others perhaps in groups, and as time passed, some grew feathers, developing the first hints of flight. Every claw, every feather, every roar was part of nature's long conversation about survival and change. While the Saurischians ruled as hunters and giants, the Ornithischians became the planet's defenders, masters of armor, design, and community. They were the plant eaters, but they were never defenseless. They carried nature's ingenuity, etched into their bones. Among them was the Stegosaurus, with plates that rose like sails along its back, and a tail tipped with deadly spikes. For decades, scientists wondered what those plates were for: defense, display, or perhaps heat regulation. And perhaps, like much of nature, the answer was a little of everything. The ankylosaurs, on the other hand, were walking fortresses. Their bodies were covered in bony plates, their tails ending in heavy clubs. They were low to the ground, slow, but nearly invincible. When a predator approached, an ankylosaur would not run. It would stand its ground. One swing of its tail could shatter a predator's leg. Then came the ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs, most famously Triceratops. They lived in herds, roaming the warm plains of the Cretaceous. Their great neck frills, beautifully decorated with colors and patterns, were used not only for defense, but for communication, a way of saying, "I am here, I belong." Each horn, each frill, was a signal of identity, a story written in bone. And among the smaller Ornithischians were the nimble Hypsilophodon and the duck-billed hadrosaurs, who graze in great numbers. The hadrosaurs, with their long crested skulls, could produce deep resonant calls, low tones that may have echoed for miles, like the song of whales today. Imagine for a moment a sunset over a prehistoric marsh. A herd of hadrosaurs stands quietly in the mist, their silhouettes moving softly, their calls deep and melodic. In the distance, a triceratops bellows, and for a moment, the ancient world hums with harmony. They were peaceful, but alert, guardians of the ancient Earth's rhythm. The more scientists uncover, the clearer it becomes that the dinosaurs were not just divided by size or diet, but connected by purpose, by balance. For every predator, there was prey. For every herbivore, a forest to tend. Each played a role in maintaining the planet's living web. Even their bodies tell stories of adaptation and unity. The large nostrils of sauropods helped cool their enormous bodies. The hollow bones of theropods made them light enough for speed and eventually for flight. The crests and plates of Ornithischians helped regulate temperature, display dominance, and attract mates. Every form had function, every creature its own quiet genius. And then there were the birds, the last living branch of the dinosaur family tree. Feathers first appeared, not for flight, but for warmth, for display. From those soft beginnings came wings. From small ground hunters like Archaeopteryx, the skies were claimed, and a new kind of dinosaur was born. It is humbling to think that when you watch a sparrow hop or a hawk soar, you are looking at the living descendants of creatures that once ruled the earth. The mighty Tyrannosaurus and the gentle Triceratops may have vanished, but their cousins still sing in the trees. All of them, the feathered, the armored, the horned, the giant, were threads in one great tapestry life, a design so ancient, yet still echoing in the world around us. And as the continents drifted, as climates changed, the dinosaurs continued to adapt, to evolve, to flourish. For over 160 million years, they filled every niche, from swamps to mountains, from deserts to coastal lagoons. They were not merely creatures of the past, but architects of Earth's biological future. When their time ended, they left behind more than bones. They left the blueprint of life's endurance. The diversity of dinosaurs reminds us of one truth that still holds meaning today. That life is strongest when it changes, when it learns, when it embraces difference. So as you breathe gently and drift deeper into thought, imagine this living earth as they once knew it, a planet of color and motion, of wings and thunder, of balance and beauty. Each dinosaur, a note in the ancient song of survival, still echoing quietly beneath the stars. Let your mind drift back softly to a time when the earth was warm, the skies were golden with haze, and the sound of footsteps echoed across fern-filled valleys. The ground trembled not with machines or thunder, but with life, enormous, graceful, and ancient. This was the realm of the dinosaurs, true rulers of the land. For more than 160 million years, they walked every corner of the planet, from the steamy jungles near the equator to the gentle twilight forests of the poles. They lived in herds, in packs, in solitude. They were grazers and hunters, giants and miniatures, creatures of every shape and sound. On land, their world was vast. Open plains stretched for miles, lined with giant conifers and cycads. Ferns grew thick underfoot, and the air shimmered with heat. Here roamed the sauropods, the long-necked giants, the living towers of their age. Imagine them: Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, Apatosaurus, their enormous forms swaying gently as they walked. Their necks rose above the trees, reaching for tender leaves bathed in sunlight, while their tails swung like great pendulums across the forest floor. These herbivorous titans shaped the land around them. Each step left deep impressions that filled with rainwater, forming pools for smaller creatures to drink. Each tree they grazed opened sunlight for new growth to flourish. In this way, they were gardeners of their world, immense and peaceful. But not all dinosaurs were gentle. Hidden in the shadows of the forests, the predators watched. The great theropods, swift, intelligent, and terrifying. They were nature's balance, the keepers of order in a world of giants. The mighty Tyrannosaurus rex, for instance, ruled the late Cretaceous plains of what is now North America. Its massive jaws could crush bone, yet its movements were calm, deliberate, almost thoughtful, like a lion in an ancient wilderness. Before T. Rex, others came: Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, Carnotaurus, each with its own way of hunting, each perfectly adapted to its time. They stalked herds silently, coordinated attacks, and survived through cunning as much as strength. Their intelligence was subtle, built not for planning cities or art, but for survival, for reading the rhythm of life itself. And then There were the smaller dinosaurs. Quick, curious, endlessly adaptive. The ornithopods, like iguanodon, graze in groups, protecting their young and traveling vast distances in search of food. The ankylosaurs, armored like living tanks, carried natural shields and clubs to defend against predators. And the stegosaurs, with their beautiful plates, stood like walking sculptures, slow, peaceful, yet always aware of the movement of shadows nearby. Across the Mesozoic landscape, dinosaurs filled every niche. Some were as tall as buildings. Others could fit in your hands. Together, they form a living network of life, a complete ecosystem balanced and dynamic. The land truly belonged to them. For millions of years, it was their kingdom, and they ruled it with quiet majesty. As the earth blossomed under their feet, another realm opened above them, the boundless, blue expanse of the sky. At first, it was empty, silent, but soon it too became alive. The earliest rulers of the air were the pterosaurs, creatures so strange and elegant that even today, they seem like something from a dream. They were not dinosaurs by definition, but close relatives, born from the same reptilian lineage, sharing the skies with their land-dwelling cousins. The pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to conquer flight, long before birds, long before bats. Their wings were membranes of skin stretched between elongated fingers, strong yet delicate, supported by hollow bones that made them light enough to soar. Imagine them gliding through the soft Mesozoic air, their wings catching warm updrafts over cliffs and seas, circling lazily under the golden sun. Some, like Pteranodon, had wingspans as wide as a small airplane. Others, like Rhamphorhynchus, were small and nimble, darting over rivers to snatch shimmering fish from the surface. The skies of the Mesozoic were filled with motion, graceful, effortless, timeless. But the story of flight didn't stop there. From small, feathered dinosaurs came another revolution, the rise of birds. Fossils like Archaeopteryx, found in the limestone of Germany, tell us this story in exquisite detail. It had feathers, wings, and a wishbone like modern birds, but also teeth, claws, and a long bony tail like a dinosaur. It was the bridge, the living link between two worlds. Feathers, at first, may not have evolved for flight at all. They likely began as insulation, tiny filaments to keep small dinosaurs warm. But over time, they grew longer, stronger, and more complex. They became tools for display, for balance, and eventually for soaring through the wind. Evolution, slow and patient, gave them the sky. Imagine standing on a Cretaceous plain, looking up. Above you, pterosaurs circle high on the thermals, their wings silent as silk. Below them, small feathered dinosaurs leap from rock to branch, fluttering awkwardly but determinedly, testing the gift of air. And in that endless blue, the first bird sings soft calls across forests that no human would ever see. The land had its giants, but the sky belonged to grace and freedom. To glide was a rule from above, to watch the world in peace, bathed in sunlight, carried by invisible winds. Now, close your eyes for a moment and drift downward, below the waves of a Mesozoic sea. The water is warm and green, glowing with sunlight that filters through the surface like shifting glass. Here, in this silent world, live creatures no less magnificent than the dinosaurs on land. The marine reptiles, rulers of the ancient oceans. These were not dinosaurs, but they shared their time and grandeur. Plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and ichthyosaurs, each ruling their own aquatic domain. The ichthyosaurs, for instance, look remarkably like modern dolphins. Their sleek, streamlined bodies allowed them to move swiftly through the water, chasing fish and squid with incredible precision. They gave birth to live young, a rare trait among reptiles, and some species grew up to 15 meters long. Imagine them gliding effortlessly through prehistoric seas, their silver blue skin flashing beneath the waves, like living comets of the deep. Then there were the plesiosaurs, long-necked, elegant swimmers. Their flippers moved like oars, propelling them gracefully through calm lagoons and open oceans alike. With their snake-like necks and small heads, they hunted with precision, snapping up schools of fish and ammonites in swift, fluid motions. They may have looked serene, almost gentle, but they were formidable hunters, perfectly adapted to the world of water. And finally, the mosasaurs, the apex predators of the late Cretaceous seas. They were immense, muscular, and deadly, some over 50 feet long. With jaws lined with rows of sharp, recurved teeth, they could crush shells and tear apart other marine reptiles. Their tails moved with powerful strokes, propelling them through the water like underwater dragons. When the land trembled with T-Rex, the seas belonged to the mosasaurs. But even in these ancient oceans, balance reigned. Coral reefs thrived, filled with tiny invertebrates and colorful fish. Ammonites, with their spiral shells, drifted like delicate ornaments through the water. And above, pterosaurs sometimes swooped low, diving for prey before returning to the warm air. From land to sky to sea, dinosaurs and their kind ruled it all. They adapted, evolved, and filled every space that life could reach. Each realm had its kings, its queens, its quiet dancers in the rhythm of survival. The world of the Mesozoic was not a single kingdom, but a tapestry of three: the land, the air, and the sea, woven together by life, balance, and change. And though their reign has ended, the echoes of their rule remain all around us, in the birds that soar, in the reptiles that bask, and in the quiet memory of bones turned to stone, telling us that once, long ago, Earth belonged to them completely. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine an Earth far different from the one we know today. No icy poles, no deep winters, no frozen winds. Instead, the planet is wrapped in a gentle, golden warmth, a world breathing slowly beneath a soft, glowing sky. This was the Mesozoic climate, a time when the air itself was kinder, thicker, and rich with the ingredients of life. The continents were still shifting, and volcanoes murmured across the horizon, sending plumes of ash and vapor into the atmosphere. But this was not a world of destruction. It was a world of renewal. Volcanoes released carbon dioxide, which trapped the sun's warmth, creating a greenhouse of life. Rain fell often, feeding rivers and swamps that shimmered under the ancient sun. The average global temperature was far higher than it is today. Even the polar regions, where we now see sheets of ice, were covered with green forests, mosses, and fern-like plants. Dinosaurs roamed under months of dim, golden twilight, where the sun barely dipped below the horizon. Imagine that quiet beauty. A world with no snow, only the endless hum of living things. The air carried more oxygen than it does now, not always steadily, but often enough that creatures grew vast and strong. Some scientists believe this rich air helped fuel the growth of giant species, massive sauropods, enormous flying reptiles, and insects larger than human hand. Each breath they took was filled with the same elements that fill our lungs today: nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, but the balance was just a little different, a little more generous, a little more alive. The oceans, too, played their part in this gentle warmth. They were wide and shallow, absorbing sunlight and carrying heat around the planet. Currents flowed like the Earth's blood, steady and nurturing. In their depths, coral reefs flourish, and plankton, tiny drifting plants, turned sunlight into life. These microscopic organisms gave oxygen to the atmosphere and color to the seas, setting the stage for everything that lived above. The Mesozoic world was like a great greenhouse, warm, moist, and balanced. Rainforests stretched across continents, and deserts, though vast, were alive with hardy plants adapted to heat. Everywhere, life found a way to thrive. It was a planet not merely surviving, but flourishing in the truest, gentlest sense of the word. If you could stand on a Mesozoic hillside and breathe in deeply, the air would feel different, heavier, perhaps, sweeter. The atmosphere then was thick with water vapor and carbon dioxide, creating a blanket around the earth that trapped warmth like a cradle. The sun itself was a little dimmer than it is today, but the greenhouse gases kept the Earth's surface warm and stable. There were no glaciers, no polar ice caps. The seasons were soft, long, humid summers and mild, rainy winters. Even the nights glowed faintly under skies rich with moisture and dust from distant volcanoes. The Triassic world, early in the Mesozoic, was drier than what came later. Vast deserts covered the center of Pangaea, where sandstorms shaped dunes that rolled endlessly under the sun. But even there, life endured. Plants like cycads, ginkgos, and early conifers learned to conserve water. Reptiles developed thick skin to keep moisture in. And wherever rivers met the land, oases formed. Small sanctuaries where ferns unfurled and the first dinosaurs gathered. As the Jurassic period dawned, everything began to shift. The supercontinent Pangaea cracked, and new oceans formed between the pieces. With more coastlines came more rainfall, and with more rain came forests, deep, breathing jungles that stretched for hundreds of miles. The Earth's climate softened, the air grew moist, and life began to bloom in every corner. Volcanoes continued to shape the sky, but their eruptions brought minerals and nutrients to the soil, feeding new life after every storm. In this balance between fire and rain, forests thrived, and so did the creatures within them. Dinosaurs basked in the sun-drenched mornings, their skin glistening with dew. Insects filled the air with a gentle hum, pollinating the first flowering plants that would soon transform the world. By the time the Cretaceous period arrived, Earth was warmer still, its oceans higher, its continents greener. It was during this time that flowering plants, called angiosperms, evolved. They filled the air with new scents and colors, attracting bees, butterflies, and small feathered dinosaurs. Pollination began, that delicate exchange between plant and insect, and with it, the natural harmony that still sustains us today. Every gust of wind, every drop of rain, every shimmer of sunlight, all worked together in perfect rhythm. It was as if the entire planet breathed as one vast organism, its pulse steady, its song ancient and soft. In this world of warmth and balance, life grew in abundance. The climate of the Mesozoic was not just kind. It was sustaining. It provided endless energy for the enormous creatures that walked, swam, and flew across the earth. Think of a sauropod, perhaps a diplodocus, grazing in the morning mist, its massive lungs filled with moist, oxygen-rich air. The ground beneath its feet was fertile, nourished by volcanic ash and constant rain. Ferns and cycads grew faster than they could be eaten, ensuring there was always food. Even when the seasons changed, the warmth never left, only shifted from one rhythm to another. Predators, too, thrived in this balance. There was enough prey to hunt, enough vegetation to hide within, enough energy to sustain the endless circle of life. Each creature depended on the climate, and the climate, in turn, depended on them. The plants absorbed carbon dioxide and released oxygen. The animals breathed that oxygen and returned carbon to the air. Volcanoes refreshed the atmosphere, and oceans stabilized the temperature. It was an elegant dance, a perfect equilibrium. Yet even in this paradise, the earth was restless. Beneath the surface, tectonic plates shifted, mountains rose, and seas deepened. Every few million years, climates changed subtly, sometimes warmer, sometimes wetter, reminding life that nothing remains the same forever. And still life adapted. New species emerged, filling new environments with grace and resilience. The Mesozoic world was the most stable climate Earth has ever known. It lasted for millions upon millions of years, long enough for dinosaurs to evolve into creatures of every shape, size, and color. From desert dwellers to deep forest wanderers, they were shaped by the warmth that wrapped their planet like a gentle embrace. The air, the sunlight, the oceans, all worked together, creating a harmony that allowed life not just to exist, but to flourish. It was a time of balance so profound, so enduring, that even now, traces of it linger in the soil and the rocks, in the very breath of air we take today. When we look up at the sky or feel the warmth of the sun on our skin, we are touching the same forces that once fed those ancient lives. The same warmth that ripened the jungles of the Jurassic still touches our world. Gentler now, quieter, but eternal. The climate of the Mesozoic was a gift, a long, steady heartbeat of the earth itself. And through that gift, life found its fullest expression in the towering giants, in the shimmering wings above the trees, and the endless oceans below. Imagine, for a moment, a world in constant motion. Mountains rise and crumble, seas come and go. And yet, through all this change, one group of creatures not only survives, but thrives for over 160 million years. That group was the dinosaurs. Their story is not just one of size or strength, but of adaptation, of quiet resilience, and of finding balance with a world that never stopped shifting beneath their feet. When dinosaurs first appeared, around 230 million years ago, they were not the rulers of Earth. They were small, light, and quick, competing with many other reptilian species. But as the Triassic period gave way to the Jurassic, something remarkable began to happen. Dinosaurs began to change, to evolve in ways that allowed them to fit every niche of life imaginable. Some grew long necks, like the gentle giants, sauropods, who could feed high above the ground, reaching leaves no other creature could touch. Others developed powerful jaws and sharp teeth, like the ferocious theropods, to hunt with unmatched precision. Their bones became hollow and light, yet strong, an early blueprint for flight that would one day give rise to birds. Their lungs grew more efficient, their hearts stronger, and their senses sharper. Every generation, every small adaptation, allowed them to adjust to whatever the planet brought their way. Even their eggs, so delicate, so carefully hidden, told the story of survival. Some were buried in warm sands, others tucked beneath ferns or guarded fiercely by parents. These small acts of care ensured that each new generation could face a world full of dangers, from predators to droughts, from fires to floods. But perhaps their greatest gift was patience. Dinosaurs evolved slowly over millions of years. Each adaptation was a whisper, not a shout, a quiet change that, over time, became the foundation of dominance. Through warmth and storm, through feast and famine, they endured. And as they did, they became more than survivors. They became masters of an ancient Earth. In their long reign, the dinosaurs became the living rhythm of the planet itself. The secret to the dinosaur success wasn't just strength, it was diversity. They didn't all look alike, move alike, or live alike. Instead, they spread into every environment, each species perfectly tuned to its own way of life. In the dense jungles of the Jurassic, Massive herbivores like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus moved slowly among trees that touched the sky. They lived in peaceful herds, their long necks swaying like ships in a green sea. In open plains, smaller dinosaurs like iguanodon grazed together, always alert for predators. And where the land met the sea, there were creatures that blurred the lines between worlds, reptiles that glided above the waves or dug beneath them, chasing fish in shimmering schools. In the air, pterosaurs soared, some with wingspans larger than a small plane. They skimmed coastlines, drifted over forests, and nested on rocky cliffs. And then there were the early birds, delicate and curious, whose feathers caught both the sunlight and the wind. This variety, this breathtaking spread of life, made the dinosaurs nearly unstoppable. When climates changed, when forests burned, when seas receded, somewhere, some kind of dinosaur was already suited to survive. They also lived in complex communities. Many species cared for their young, guarding nests, feeding hatchlings, and teaching them to move in herds or hunt in packs. Fossilized footprints show adults walking beside their young, side by side, across ancient riverbanks. This care, this social structure, wasn't just emotion, it was strategy. By nurturing their young, dinosaurs ensured that their kind would not vanish after every storm or drought. Each new generation carried the wisdom of survival a little further, and while predators and prey battled endlessly, they also balanced each other. Carnivores kept populations in check. Herbivores shaped the forests and plains. Together, they created ecosystems full of motion, sound, and life. The dinosaurs ruled not by conquest, but by coexistence, by becoming part of the planet's pulse. When we look at their fossils today, the bones, the teeth, the ancient footprints, we often imagine them as symbols of extinction. But for more than 160 million years, they were the embodiment of endurance. They lived through massive volcanic eruptions, through shifting continents and evolving climates. The air thickened and thinned. The forests changed shape. The oceans rose and fell. And still, the dinosaurs remained adjusting, adapting, thriving. Their success came from a perfect blend of flexibility and specialization. They didn't resist change. They moved with it. When forests spread, they grew taller to reach the treetops. When open plains formed, they learned to run faster, to live in herds, to migrate with the seasons. Their skeletons show remarkable efficiency, strong where needed, light where possible. Their bodies were like instruments, finely tuned for survival. And their minds, though not as complex as ours, were deeply aware of their surroundings. Some hunted in groups. Some used calls and signals to communicate. Some built nests in the same spots for generations, knowing instinctively where the earth would stay warm enough to hatch their eggs. Even extinction events that wiped out other species barely scratched them. They outlasted most rivals, including the mighty marine reptiles and early crocodilians. Time and again, the dinosaurs emerged stronger. But perhaps the greatest proof of their survival is that they never truly vanished, because one branch of their family tree, the feathered dinosaurs, continued evolving long after the Great Extinction. And today, when you look up and see a bird gliding through the sky, you are seeing a living dinosaur carrying the song of an ancient world. So, the true secret of their dominance wasn't brute force or size. It was their harmony with change, their quiet ability to bend, to adapt, and to thrive. For 160 million years, they were the stewards of life on Earth, and though the age of giants has passed, their spirit still soars above us, in every wingbeat, every echo of evolution's dance. The dinosaurs remind us that survival is not about power. It's about balance. And sometimes the quietest strength lasts the longest. Close your eyes and imagine walking across a quiet desert. The wind moves slowly, brushing over soft sand and ancient rock. Beneath your feet, hidden deep within the earth, lies a secret, a memory carved in stone, waiting patiently to be found. That memory is a fossil. Every fossil is a whisper from the past, a message carried across millions of years, telling the story of creatures that once walked, swam, and flew across this planet. And for scientists, paleontologists, these fossils are the only direct conversation we have with the dinosaurs. But how do bones, delicate as they are, survive for so long? It begins with death and with time. When a dinosaur died, its body might have been buried by mud, sand, or volcanic ash. Slowly, the soft tissues decayed, but the bones, the harder parts, remained. Over countless centuries, minerals from the surrounding earth seeped into those bones, replacing the organic matter bit by bit. What was once living tissue became stone. This process, called permineralization, turned bones into fossils. Sometimes, even the smallest details were preserved. The ridges of a tooth, the pattern of a scale, or the curve of a claw. And sometimes, even more astonishing things survived. The delicate imprint of skin, the outline of feathers, even the impression of a dinosaur's last steps, pressed forever into the earth. Each discovery is like opening a window to another world. A fossilized footprint might reveal how a dinosaur walked, how fast it moved, or whether it traveled alone or in a group. A nest of fossilized eggs might show how it raised its young. A tooth lodged in another bone might tell of a hunt, a struggle, a moment frozen in time. To a paleontologist, each fossil is not just a bone. It's a clue in a grand, ancient puzzle, a story told in silence, yet filled with life. And as scientists dig deeper, the Earth slowly begins to remember. The work of a paleontologist is gentle, almost meditative. With brushes, chisels, and careful hands, they uncover pieces of creatures that last walked the earth millions of years ago. Every grain of sand they remove is a step backward through time. It begins in the field, a desert, a cliff, a riverbank. Many fossil sites look ordinary to the untrained eye. But to scientists, subtle shapes in the rock, tiny fragments of bone, or unusual textures can signal the presence of something extraordinary beneath. Once a fossil is found, the process becomes a blend of science and patience. The bones are carefully exposed but left partly in the ground to protect them. Then, they are wrapped in layers of plaster and burlap, creating what's known as a field jacket. This keeps the fossils safe during transport to the lab. Inside laboratories, the real artistry begins. Using tiny tools and microscopes, paleontologists clean and study each fragment. They measure, compare, and sometimes scan them with X-rays or CT machines. This allows them to see the inside of fossils without breaking them, to glimpse ancient bone structures, hidden cavities, or even traces of blood vessels and feathers. From there, scientists reconstruct the dinosaur, piece by piece. They study how the bones fit together, how the muscles might have attached, how the animal might have moved, breathed, or hunted. Using computer modeling, they can even simulate motion, showing how a tail swung or how a wing flapped in the wind. Sometimes, a single fossil changes everything we thought we knew. A tiny feathered skeleton found in China revealed that many dinosaurs were covered in plumage, the ancestors of modern birds. A nest discovered in Mongolia showed that some dinosaurs care for their young. And an entire herd of fossilized footprints in South America proved that these ancient creatures often moved together, in families, not as loners. Each discovery doesn't just add information, it adds emotion. It lets us feel the life that once filled this world. The earth becomes a storyteller again in the fossils, her ancient words. There's something beautifully humbling about fossils. They remind us how fleeting life is, and yet how lasting its traces can be. The dinosaurs are gone, but through fossils, their presence still echoes. Each bone, each imprint, carries a story of survival, of motion, of existence. And in the stillness of a museum, when you stand before the towering skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex or the long neck of a Diplodocus, you are not just looking at stone. You are looking at time itself, sculpted, silent, and eternal. Scientists today use far more than shovels and brushes. They use satellites to find new fossil-rich regions, lasers to map bone structures, and DNA studies to trace evolutionary links between dinosaurs and modern creatures. Through these tools, the story of life continues to unfold. And yet, there's still mystery. For every fossil discovered, there are thousands waiting quietly beneath our feet, hidden in the rock, untouched for millions of years. Each one holds a question, a forgotten chapter. Sometimes, the most remarkable discoveries happen not through technology, but through chance. A hiker stumbles upon a bone weathering from a hillside. A storm reveals a fossil bed long buried by sand. Nature, in her own timing, chooses when to share her secrets. And so, the work continues, patient, gentle, and reverent. Each fossil unites us with the creatures that came before us. They are not just remains, they are connections. When we hold a fossil, we hold a moment that once lived and breathed, a heartbeat frozen in stone. And in that quiet moment, we realize that we, too, are part of this same ancient story, born of earth, shaped by time, and carried forward by curiosity. The fossils don't speak in words, but if you listen closely, you can still hear them breathe. Imagine the earth, 66 million years ago, a world alive with color, sound, and motion. Lush forests stretch endlessly, rivers meander under a golden sky, and the air is filled with the distant calls of creatures both gentle and fierce. In this living symphony, dinosaurs still rule. Massive triceratops graze lazily under ferns, while Tyrannosaurus rex watches the horizon with calm, predatory patience. In the sky, pterosaurs glide like kites caught in warm winds, and in the shallows, small mammals scurry between roots and stones, unnoticed in the shadow of giants. It is peaceful, but the peace is fragile. Far above the earth, beyond the clouds, beyond the moon's silver light, something vast and silent drifts closer. A mountain of stone and metal 6 miles wide. An asteroid, traveling faster than any bullet, drawn toward the blue planet below by the pull of gravity and fate. No creature looks up to see it. No one knows what's coming. The forests still whisper, the waves still move, the winds still sing. But in a few moments, on a scale too immense to comprehend, everything will change. As the asteroid enters Earth's atmosphere, the air around it ignites. The sky lights up brighter than 1,000 suns. The roar is not of thunder, but the heavens themselves tearing open, and then impact. In what is now the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, the asteroid strikes the Earth with unimaginable force, more powerful than billions of nuclear bombs combined. The ground splits, the sea rises, and the air catches fire. A single moment that ends an era. The dinosaurs never saw it coming, but the planet felt every heartbeat of it. In the first seconds after impact, shock waves raced through the crust of the earth, faster than sound. Mountains crumbled, oceans surged outward in towering tsunamis, sweeping across continents. Trees ignited where they stood. Forests became waves of flame. The impact crater, nearly 150 kilometers wide, became a wound in the planet itself, glowing with molten rock and vaporized stone. Everything nearby was instantly reduced to ash. But the devastation didn't stop there. The asteroids forced through billions of tons of rock and dust high into the atmosphere. The air was filled with particles so thick that sunlight could no longer reach the surface. Tiny glass-like beads, called tektites, rained from the sky, formed when molten rock was hurled upward, cooled in space, and then fell back to Earth. Within hours, the entire planet was cloaked in darkness. The sky glowed red with firestorms, then faded into deep gray. The earth grew silent. Animals fled blindly. The seas churned with debris. Even those far from the crater, thousands of miles away, felt the world shifting. In the chaos, some dinosaurs tried to survive. Fossil evidence shows sudden burrows, nests abandoned mid-construction, and fossilized bones lying side by side, as if entire herds fell together. Volcanoes, already active across regions like India, erupted more fiercely, pouring gases and ash into the air. The atmosphere thickened with carbon dioxide, sulfur, and soot. Acid rain fell, poisoning rivers and lakes. And yet, amid this chaos, the first survivors were not the strongest or the fiercest. They were the smallest, creatures that could hide, burrow, or wait. Mammals the size of mice, birds that could take shelter, and insects that fed on decay. The mighty age of the dinosaurs had begun to crumble, not with one explosion, but with a slow, suffocating darkness that wrapped around the world. The skies that once carried the cries of pterosaurs now held only silence. For months, maybe years, sunlight barely reached the ground. The earth entered a kind of twilight. Photosynthesis nearly stopped. Plants withered. Forests died. And without plants, the herbivores, the great eaters of green, began to vanish. Without herbivores, the predators followed. Each link in the chain of life began to fall, one by one. The air grew cold. Temperatures plummeted. Ash drifted down like black snow, settling over mountains and plains. The oceans, too, grew darker, their surfaces coated with soot. Plankton, the tiny life that forms the base of the marine food web, struggled to survive. Coral reefs faded, fish populations collapsed, and the seas grew eerily still. This was the end of the Cretaceous, the end of the Mesozoic era, the end of an age that had lasted for over 160 million years. But even in this darkness, life whispered. Tiny mammals, hidden in burrows, continued to breathe. Birds, descended from the smaller feathered dinosaurs, found refuge in sheltered valleys. Seeds buried beneath the soil waited for warmth to return. And slowly it did. The dust began to settle. The fires dimmed. Sunlight once again touched the earth. What had been a world of giants was now a quiet planet of survivors. In that silence, new beginnings stirred. Mammals began to rise, feeding, exploring, evolving. Forests regrew, green and fragile. The sky, once again, filled with the calls of creatures, not the thunderous roars of dinosaurs, but the gentle songs of birds. The age of dinosaurs had ended, but life, as always, endured. From destruction came renewal. From silence came song. And even today, when scientists uncover the thin, dark layer of rock that marks that fateful moment, the boundary between the Cretaceous and what came after, they are touching the line between two worlds, the world that was and the world that began anew. The asteroid ended an era, but it also began the story of us. It happened in less than a heartbeat, a moment so brief, so violent, that the entire world shifted in the blink of an eye. The asteroid, 6 miles wide, moving at over 20 kilometers per second, slammed into the Earth with the energy of billions of atomic bombs. The impact site, now known as the Chicxulub crater, was once a shallow tropical sea off the coast of what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. In that instant, everything within hundreds of miles simply ceased to exist. The asteroid hit with such force that it vaporized itself in a massive volume of Earth's crust, carving a hole over 90 miles wide and 20 miles deep. Temperatures at the point of contact soared higher than the surface of the sun. The air itself turned to fire. A blinding flash spread across the horizon, followed by shock waves that tore through rock, ocean, and air alike. The sea exploded outward, rising in waves taller than skyscrapers. These tsunamis raced across the planet's oceans, crashing into distant shores hours later, leaving behind chaos and silence. The ground rippled like water. Trees fell before the wind that followed, winds faster than hurricanes, hot enough to ignite forests hundreds of kilometers away. Animals, caught in the open, had no time to flee. Their world, bright and alive only seconds before, became a furnace of light and noise. The very shape of the continent changed. The energy of the impact traveled deep into the earth, causing volcanoes to awaken thousands of miles away. The planet groaned under the force of its wound, and as the dust began to rise, thick and heavy, the first shadows of extinction began to form. It was the end of a moment and the beginning of forever. In the minutes and hours that followed, the world became unrecognizable. Everywhere, fires erupted, not from matches or lightning, but from the sky itself. The asteroid's impact had ejected billions of tons of molten rock and vaporized debris high above the atmosphere. As those fragments rained back down through the sky, they superheated the air, turning it into a global oven. Temperatures soared to unbearable levels. Even thousands of miles from crater, forests caught fire. Grasslands became rivers of flame. Imagine standing anywhere on Earth during that time. The sky glowing orange, filled with streaks of falling fire. Ash drifted through the air, thick as snow. The smell of burning forests, of vaporized oceans, filled the wind. Soon after, the rain began. But this was no ordinary rain. It was acidic, formed from chemicals released by the impact and the fires that followed. As water mixed with sulfur and carbon from the atmosphere, droplets turned deadly. They hissed as they fell, scarring leaves, poisoning rivers, and corroding soil. The oceans, too, suffered. The sudden influx of debris and heat caused vast regions to boil, killing marine life near the surface. Coral reefs died almost instantly. Even the plankton, the tiny drifting life that supports all ocean ecosystems, began to vanish. Above, the clouds thickened. The sunlight dimmed. The day after the impact was no day at all. It was twilight, and that twilight deepened into something colder, something darker, a global night. In those first few hours, the world didn't just burn, it began to fade. Within days, the earth was wrapped in a veil of ash and dust. Particles of sulfur, soot, and pulverized rock spread high into the atmosphere, forming a blanket that trapped heat at first and then slowly blocked the sun. Temperatures began to fall. The light that reached the ground grew weaker, redder, like the glow of dying embers. Then it vanished entirely. For weeks, perhaps months, the planet was shrouded in darkness. Photosynthesis halted. Plants stopped growing. The food chain, once vibrant and abundant, began to collapse from the ground up. The great herbivores, the sauropods, the triceratops, the hadrosaurs, found nothing left to eat. Without them, the predators starved soon after. Even the air grew harder to breathe in some places, filled with smoke and ash. The surface of the earth cooled rapidly, while the oceans, once warm and alive, began to chill from above. Rain turned to sleet, then snow. In some regions, volcanic eruptions continued to fill the sky with more ash, prolonging the night. And through it all, the world grew silent. The roars that once shook the forest, the thunder of giant footsteps, the calls of birds and beasts, all were gone. Only the whisper of wind remained, moving over a world now empty and still. Yet even then, in the hidden places, underground burrows, deep lakes, sheltered caves, small creatures endured. Tiny mammals, no larger than your hand, huddled together for warmth. Some birds, descendants of smaller dinosaurs, found refuge in sheltered valleys. Life, reduced to embers, refused to go out completely. And as the sky finally began to clear, as sunlight touched the earth once more, those embers began to glow again. In the first moments after the asteroid struck, life was nearly extinguished. But in those same moments, the seeds of a new world were quietly waiting, hidden beneath ash and shadow. Because even in destruction, the earth remembers how to heal, and every ending, no matter how dark, carries within it the promise of a beginning. After the impact, the world fell into silence. The roar of the explosion faded. The fires burned low, and what remained was a sky so thick with dust and ash that sunlight could no longer reach the ground. For the first time in more than 100 million years, the earth went dark, truly dark. Day and night became indistinguishable. The sun, once blazing and golden, was now just a faint red glow behind the clouds. The atmosphere was filled with soot from burning forests, vaporized rock, and molten rain that had cooled into glass-like dust. Scientists call this a nuclear winter. Like effect, a global shadow that stretched over months, perhaps even years. The temperature of the earth began to plummet. Within days, the warmth that dinosaurs had known for millions of years vanished. Tropical regions froze. Snow began to fall where no snow had fallen before. The once lush forests became graveyards of ash and frost. Imagine standing in that world, a silence so deep you could hear your own heartbeat. The smell of smoke still lingers, but the fires have stopped feeding, because there's nothing left to burn. And above, a strange twilight paints the air, dull reds, fading purples, deep grays. No birds sing. No insects hum. Even the oceans are eerily quiet. The earth, once alive with sound and color, has become a planet in mourning. Yet within that darkness, something remarkable was taking place. The planet was changing, reshaping itself in ways that would set the stage for everything that came next. For this was not only an ending, it was also a transformation. Every fire eventually fades, but from its ashes, the world learns to breathe again. As the ash continued to block sunlight, the surface of the earth grew colder and colder. Temperatures fell below freezing even in the warmest parts of the world. Oceans cooled rapidly, and their upper layers began to freeze in places. Plants, deprived of sunlight, withered. Without plants, herbivores starved. Without herbivores, predators followed. It was a cascade of extinction, one species after another, fading quietly into the shadows. But beneath the frozen crust of this dying world, new cycles were beginning. The oceans, though cold, still moved. Deep currents circulated nutrients that had been trapped for ages. Volcanic activity, stirred by the impact's energy, released heat from below. This slow interplay of cold and fire began to reawaken certain corners of the planet. Volcanoes erupted across what is now India, the Deccan Traps, pouring rivers of lava that glowed like veins of fire against a world gone dim. The contrast was surreal. Frozen forests blanketed in snow, beside glowing rivers of molten rock. Storms of ash and lightning flashing above icy seas. It was chaos, yet within that chaos, balance was being rebuilt. Over time, the dust began to settle. The sky, once opaque and suffocating, started to clear. The faint light of the sun returned, weak at first, but persistent, and with it came the first signs of renewal. Ice melted into streams. Seeds that had lain dormant beneath the frost began to stir. Tiny green shoots reached up toward the faint, pale sky. The cold that had silenced the earth was beginning to loosen its grip, and in those quiet cracks of thawing soil, life whispered again. Years passed. The fires had burned out. The skies had begun to clear, and the long winter of the earth slowly came to an end. When sunlight finally returned in full, it was almost as if the world took a deep breath for the first time in ages. But the world illuminated was not the same one that had existed before. The vast empires of dinosaurs were gone. Forests were smaller, simpler, composed of hardy plants that could survive in poor soil and uncertain light. The air, once thick with the calls of enormous creatures, was now filled only with the faint rustling of wind. Yet, beneath fallen logs and in burrows dug deep into the soil, small animals emerged. Mammals, creatures that had once lived in the shadows of giants, began to scurry across the empty landscapes. Birds, descendants of the surviving feathered dinosaurs, took to the sky once again, fragile but free. Volcanic activity slowly calmed, and the atmosphere, though changed, began to stabilize. Carbon levels shifted, oxygen balanced once more. The planet, scarred, blackened, and reshaped, began to heal. It's hard to imagine that such destruction could lead to rebirth. But that is the quiet lesson of nature. Even in endings, there are beginnings hidden within. The darkness that followed the asteroid's impact had seemed eternal. The fire had burned too hot. The cold had cut too deep. But through it all, the earth endured. And from the ashes of that lost world, new possibilities began to grow. Smaller, gentler, but no less miraculous. Because life, no matter how fragile, finds a way to begin again. In the long hush that followed the fire and the cold, the world dreamed of sunlight again. And when the light returned, the dream awakened, not as the age of dinosaurs, but as the dawn of something entirely new. After the asteroid struck, the world didn't end in a single moment. It unraveled slowly, painfully, over weeks, months, and years. The dinosaurs, once the rulers of land, sky, and sea, did not vanish in an instant. They lingered, wandering through a world that was fading beneath their feet. At first, they must have tried to go on as before. The great herbivores searched for the forest they once knew, but the trees were gone, burned to ash or frozen beneath ice. The ground, once soft and green, was now gray and lifeless. The air carried the scent of dust instead of flowers. The rivers were poisoned with soot. The winds were bitterly cold. Even beneath the ghostly daylight that filtered weakly through the ash-filled skies. In this dim twilight, hunger became their constant companion. Herbivores starved, their massive bodies unable to find enough food to sustain them. Predators, too, began to weaken, not from lack of strength or skill, but from the emptiness of a dying ecosystem. Each day became quieter. The calls that once echoed across jungles and plains grew fewer, then stopped altogether. And slowly, the giants began to fall. The world that had once belonged to them was no longer theirs. It had changed, its warmth gone, its balance broken, its rhythm disrupted. Some dinosaurs may have migrated, wandering hundreds of miles in search of food or warmth, but there was none to be found. Their footprints, pressed into mud, were washed away by the acid rains or buried under layers of falling ash. The great age of reptiles, so powerful, so enduring, was coming to its close, not with a roar, but with silence. Extinction is never sudden. It is a quiet fading, a long exhale, a slow surrender to time. And for the dinosaurs, that final breath was drawn beneath a sky that no longer remembered the sun. But even in that shadowed age, not all perished right away. Some dinosaurs, smaller, feathered, resilient, clung to existence in the least expected corners of the planet, near rivers that still flowed, or in valleys where the wind carried warmth from volcanic vents. They tried to survive. These survivors were the echoes of a world that refused to die completely. They ate whatever they could find, seeds, insects, small creatures, while larger species starved. Their size, once a disadvantage in a world of giants, had become a gift. They required less food, less space, less warmth. Among these were the ancestors of modern birds. They, too, bore feathers and light bones, able to glide from one shelter to another. Their instincts to hide, to migrate, to adapt became the key to life's endurance. The great predators, like the Tyrannosaurus rex, met their end more swiftly. Without prey, their strength became their burden. Their thunderous steps grew slower, their roars weaker, until finally there was only the hush of wind where once their power had ruled. The oceans, too, lost their rulers. The marine reptiles, mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, vanished as the food chain beneath them collapsed. Even the sky grew emptier as the great flying pterosaurs disappeared, unable to find the fish they once hunted. It was as if the earth was cleansing itself, returning to stillness before it could begin anew. And in that stillness, something extraordinary was quietly unfolding. While the last of the dinosaurs faded, other creatures, small mammals with soft fur and sharp minds, began to rise. They hid in burrows, fed on roots, seeds, and insects, and waited out the long darkness. What had once been prey was now becoming the future. It was the first whisper of a new age, one shaped not by size or strength, but by adaptability and resilience. And so, as the dinosaurs passed into memory, life itself kept breathing, faintly, softly, patiently. It's easy to think of extinction as an ending, but in truth, it's more like a transformation, the turning of one great page in the story of life. Though the great dinosaurs were gone, they were not erased completely. Their legacy lingered in stone, in evolution, and even the skies above us. For from among those small, feathered survivors, the ones who endured the cold, the hunger, and the endless twilight, came the birds we know today. Every chirp, every flutter of wings, every soft coo in the morning air is an echo of that ancient lineage. Dinosaurs did not vanish entirely. They changed. They adapted. They took to the air and learned to sing. And beneath the ground, in fossils preserved across millions of years, their bones tell their story of grandeur, of resilience, and of the fragility of power. Each fossil unearthed is a whisper from that lost world, a reminder how fleeting dominance can be, and how deeply life can endure. Even the very rocks of the earth hold traces of that event. Layers of iridium-rich clay marking the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene. It's a scar in the planet's memory, but also a chapter of renewal. From that extinction, new possibilities arose. The world would see new species, new shapes of life, new voices filling the silence the dinosaurs left behind. It was the end of an era, but not the end of life. In the stillness after the storm, the earth began to dream again. The giants were gone, but their spirit, their story, would never be forgotten. Every feather, every fossil, every bird that soars today carries their legacy through time. So in a way, the dinosaurs are still here, watching quietly from the branches above, their ancient hearts beating softly beneath feathers instead of scales. And perhaps that's the truest form of survival, not the body, but the memory that endures. When the fires went out and the ash finally began to settle, the earth was quiet, deeply, hauntingly quiet. The skies were clearing, the sunlight was returning, and the long winter that had gripped the world began to loosen its hold. But what it revealed was a planet transformed. The lush forests of the Mesozoic were gone. The giant reptiles that once ruled every corner of land and sea had vanished. What remained was a barren, broken world, scattered with the bones of what once was. And yet, in that silence, life stirred again. Tiny ferns began to sprout from the cracks of volcanic rock. Moss spread like a soft green blanket over gray soil. Rain returned, washing away the soot, carrying nutrients back into the ground. And within this fragile rebirth, small, warm-blooded creatures began to emerge in their hiding places, from burrows, hollow logs, and caves. These were the mammals, survivors of a world that had nearly ended. They were small, cautious, and clever, some no larger than your hand, others the size of rabbits. For millions of years, they had lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs, scurrying under leaves, feeding at night, always unseen. But now, the giants were gone, and the age of smallness, of warmth, fur, and adaptability had begun. In the early days, these mammals were humble beings. They ate insects, seeds, roots, anything they could find. They moved quietly, alert to every danger, their eyes wide, their ears tuned to the faintest rustle of life around them. And though they were fragile, they carried something powerful within them, a secret gift that would shape the future. Curiosity. It was curiosity, the instinct to explore, to learn, to adapt, that would one day lead their descendants to uncover the story of the very world that almost destroyed them. But first, they had to survive. As the earth healed, new ecosystems began to grow from its wounds. Forests returned, first as small shrubs and hardy plants, then as towering trees once more. Insects repopulated the air. Rivers flowed clean again. And within this changing world, the mammals flourished. Unlike the reptiles before them, these creatures were warm-blooded. Their bodies could generate their own heat, allowing them to survive through the cold nights that still swept the recovering planet. They were agile, swift, and curious, with sharp senses and sharper instincts. Over time, they began to diversify. Some took to the trees, leaping from branch to branch. Others burrowed into the soil, creating intricate tunnels. Some returned to the water, adapting to the tides. Their sizes, shapes, and abilities expanded with every passing millennium. And among them, something remarkable began to evolve. Intelligence. Not just instinct or reaction, but problem-solving, memory, learning. Mammals began to recognize patterns, to use their environment more skillfully, to care for their young with tenderness unseen in most of the animal kingdom. The bond between parent and child, the warmth, the protection, the teaching, became a cornerstone of their survival. Each generation learned from the last. Each life became a continuation of the one before. And slowly, from this pattern of nurturing and learning, a new kind of mind emerged, one capable not just of surviving, but of imagining. Imagine the first creatures that looked up at the sky, seeing the stars once again after the long darkness, sensing that the world was vast and full of mystery. They could not speak, yet something within them stirred, something that would one day become wonder. And from that wonder, the story of all of us began. Millions of years passed. The earth, once broken, had become alive again, greener, brighter, and more vibrant than ever before. New forms of mammals evolved, some small and nimble, others large and powerful. In the forests of the Paleocene and Eocene, strange creatures walked and ran and climbed. Early primates, the ancestors of elephants, whales, and horses. Life was experimenting again, trying new shapes, new paths. And among them, a lineage of curious, clever mammals began to develop traits that would one day define humanity. Hands that could grasp, eyes that could see depth, brains that could imagine possibilities. These early primates learned to live together, to communicate, to share knowledge. They learned to use tools, simple at first, but powerful in meaning. Each new discovery, no matter how small, pushed them a little further toward awareness. Over time, they stood taller. They learned to shape fire, to build shelter, to tell stories. And with each generation, they carried forward the same spark that had allowed their ancestors to survive that ancient catastrophe: adaptability, curiosity, and resilience. When you trace the line of your own existence far enough back, past humans, past apes, past the first mammals, you eventually reach those tiny survivors who emerged from the shadow of the dinosaurs. The ones who waited, who endured, who believed, in their own silent, instinctive way, that life would find a way. And it did. So when you look at the stars tonight or listen to the sound of wind through trees, remember, you are part of a story that began long before us. A story that rose from the ashes of a fallen world. The mammals that inherited the earth after the dinosaurs carried the dreams of evolution forward, until one day, one species looked up and wondered where it all began. That species was us. From the ashes of the end came beginning of everything we are. The dinosaurs had ruled the world with strength, but their passing made room for something new, a world ruled by thought, by love, and by imagination. And so, from the silence that followed their extinction, life began again, and this time it began to dream. When we think of dinosaurs, we often imagine giants, creatures of unimaginable size and strength, moving through ancient forests beneath a blazing prehistoric sun. But beyond the bones, beyond the fossils, there's a deeper story, one that whispers lessons across millions of years, lessons about life, about change, and about what it means to endure. The dinosaurs lived for more than 160 million years. That's 40 times longer than humans have existed. They adapted through shifting continents, changing climates, and countless challenges. They thrived in lush jungles and arid deserts, in warm seas and icy plains. And yet, even they were not immune to change. In the end, it wasn't weakness that ended their reign. It was the unpredictability of the universe itself. But the remarkable thing is what came after. Because the end of the dinosaurs wasn't just an ending. It was also the beginning of a new chapter in life's story. And that's the first lesson they teach us. That even in the face of loss, life always finds a way forward. Change, no matter how devastating, always carries within it the seed of renewal. The earth, wounded and silent, became a cradle once more. New species emerged. New forms of life evolved. The dinosaurs' fall made space for the rise of mammals, and eventually, for us, beings capable of reflection, emotion, and wonder. In a way, every breath we take today, every heartbeat, every thought, is part of their legacy, because without their ending, our beginning could never have come. Their bones may sleep in stone, but their story still moves within us, a quiet reminder that nothing truly ends. It only transforms. If we look closely, we can see that the dinosaurs' world was never static. They lived through constant transformation, volcanoes erupting, oceans shifting, mountains rising and falling. And yet, through all that turmoil, they continued to adapt. Some grew feathers. Some learned to fly. Others shrank, evolved, and survived in forms that still live today as birds. That's the second lesson they offer us: adaptability, the ability to change with the world, not against it. In our modern lives, change often feels frightening. We cling to what we know, to routines, to stability. But nature shows us that survival doesn't belong to the strongest or the largest. It belongs to those who can bend without breaking. The dinosaurs that endured longest weren't always the most fearsome, but the most flexible. Creatures that could thrive in changing environments, that could adjust when the familiar disappeared. And we, too, are part of that story. We are the descendants of survivors, of creatures who learn to adapt, to evolve, to embrace uncertainty. Every challenge we face today, whether personal, emotional, or planetary, is another form of that same cycle. Life changes. The world shifts. But just as the dinosaurs once adapted, we can, too. When we face darkness, when everything seems to fall apart, perhaps we can remember their story. That even the greatest empires of nature can crumble, and still, from that ruin, beauty can rise again. The dinosaurs remind us not of destruction, but of endurance. Their fossils are not just relics. They're records of resilience written in stone. There's a quiet comfort in knowing that we walk on the same earth the dinosaurs once did. The same oceans that lapped at their shores still move beneath the moonlight. The same star that watched over their world still glow above us tonight. And if we listen closely, perhaps we can feel the echo of their time, a heartbeat beneath the soil, a whisper in the wind, a story that never truly ended. That is their final lesson. Resilience isn't about never falling. It's about rising again in new forms, in new ways, through the endless flow of time. The earth has seen countless ages come and go, fire and ice, darkness and light. Yet life always finds a rhythm again. It adapts, it learns, it begins anew. In that sense, we are all connected to the dinosaurs, not by size or power, but by persistence. We are the continuation of a story that began long before us, written in stardust, carried by time. When you look at a bird flying across the evening sky, remember, you are watching the living memory of a dinosaur. Its wings beat with the strength of survival, with the spirit of resilience that has never faded. And when you face your own storms, your own dark nights of change, remember this ancient truth. The world has fallen before, and yet it always rises again. So can you, because the story of the dinosaurs, of endings, of beginnings, of transformation, is also the story of us all. And now, as we close our eyes, let us honor their memory, not as creatures of the past, but as teachers of life's enduring rhythm. May their story remind you that even in the deepest silence, the world is still dreaming of new life, still healing, still becoming. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams carry you across ancient worlds, beneath starry skies, through the echoes of time. And may you wake knowing that, just like the earth itself, you are capable of endless renewal. Good night and goodbye.